This next section is all about linking tasks and adding resources.
First of all, I'm going to highlight all the tasks, and then I'm going to click on this link icon on the task tab. Now immediately that places the task numbers in the predecessors column, and I get a list shown on the Gantt chart. If I go to the format tab and put critical tasks on, you'll see that these are all critical because there's no time gap between them. Now that may be the case in some projects, but for a whole project to be critical like that is quite unusual, so I'm going to delete that off. But that is a quick way of doing linking tasks, and it's also something that you can do for a group of tasks, 3 or 4 tasks, rather than the whole thing. But I'm going to do this manually, and you can see how it works. So we've got install software room as our first task. So test software room 1 follows install software room 1, so I can put a 2 in there. And then train software room 1 follows test, so I can put a 3 in there, task 3. And then room 1 complete follows task 4. Now I'm not going to say install software room 2 follows room 1 complete, so I'm just going to leave that one for a while and we'll come back to that one. Test software room 2 follows install software room 2, so I can put a 6 in there. And then train on software room 2 follows test software room 2, so I can put a 7 in there. And then room 2 complete follows train on software room 2, so I can put an 8 in there. So I have got 2 sets of steps, as I call them, steps there, so I could have grouped those and clicked the chain link and that would have worked. Now project complete has to follow 2 tasks. It has to follow train on software room 1 complete, which is task 5, and room 2 complete, which is task 9. So to do that, I type 5, 9. And you see the link there. Now back to this one. When you type in the numbers like this, it's putting the default link, which is a one task finishes before the next one starts, or an FS link. But I don't want that to be the case for this one. So this little scenario I want to paint for you is that 2 engineers are going to do these tasks. When the senior engineer appears, he will dictate when the junior engineer can start doing his tasks. So I'm going to type 2 SS there, which means start to start, and when I click away you can see how that works. So the line comes out of the top task and points into the bottom task. So basically the start of the top task will dictate when the start of this bottom task can happen. So for example, if the chief engineer is delayed, and if I pull all these tasks forward a bit, everything is either pushed forward by that top task or pushed forward by this link here for this second set of tasks. I'll just undo that to bring them back. Now typing 2SS, how did I know I could do that? If I double click onto this task and go onto the predecessors tab, you can see the full name of it there, start to start with the abbreviation SS. Now if I drop this little arrow down, you can see the other links that's in there. So finish to start was the default one. Now I don't need to put FS on there unless I'm going to qualify it with some lead or lag time, which we'll do shortly. Every other one though, SS, FF for finish to finish, and SF for start to finish, I do need to qualify so the computer knows what type of link I am doing. So I'll leave that on start to start, click OK to that, and I'll just go through the other types. So I'm just going to type a few tasks down the bottom here. So do the finish to finish one, and then the start to finish one. So these will all be 1-day tasks. And then let's see the finish to finish one. So task B is going to be driven by task A using the finish to finish link. So I need to type in there 12 FF, and when I press enter you can see the link. So the finish of task A will dictate when task B can finish. So a little example of that would be task A is installing plug sockets into a room. Task B is testing those sockets. So I can't finish task B until task A is finished. Now there might be a bit of a delay on this task. They probably won't finish exactly at the same time. So I'm just going to show you how you put a delay on a task. So I'm just going to double click into that. So lag and lead. So lag is what I want. I'm going to put 1H for hour and click OK, and then you can see that. So the finish of that will dictate when that can finish, and there's a 1 hour delay. Now this one is a start to finish, so I'm going to type 15 SF, and now because this is going to go before the start date, it's going to ask me if that's okay. I click OK to that, and you can see how the start of this task will dictate when this one can finish. Now if I just pull that forward a little bit so you can see it better. This is quite a common task, although I have seen some textbooks where it says it's not very common. This is like just-in-time delivery, so the start of this dictates when that finishes. So I could be starting to dig a foundation hole. I want the wet concrete delivery to finish as I am due to start, or I want the catering, the start of the catering to be laid out in a wedding reception to dictate when the transport for that finishes. So there are lots of different uses of this. The benefit of this is if I pull this forward, sometimes people use this as a milestone. That could be a handover to a different department or a different company. If it's delayed, it just pulls everything with it. So depending on what type of business you're in, depends whether you use these type of tasks or you would use these ones as default follow-ons. If I pull that forward, you see what's happened there? That's moved forward, but this one hasn't, so there's left a big gap there. Whereas when I pull this one forward, it always pulls everything with it. Now I'm not saying that's not, you can't do that, because you could obviously move that one forward and that one forward and so on and so on, but it's a bit more of an effort to keep on top of your tasks. Let's pull these back to the start position. Now I'm going to do another task, task E. I'm going to do a 5-day task, and then I'm going to do task F, which is also going to be a 5-day task, and I'm just going to link these. So that's just going to be 18, normal link. So let's say in this example, task E is paint the undercoat of a room, and task F is paint the second coat of a room. Do I need to wait until the whole of the undercoat is done before I can start doing the second coat? So I'm going to say not. So if I go in there and go -4, for D is a default, so days it'll come back. I'm basically saying there, look, after 1 day of the task E, I can start doing task F. Now I personally don't like the way it does that, where it doubles round, so I'm going to change this link to be 18 SS plus 1. See what that looks like? So now the start of that task dictates when this can happen. So if the undercoat is delayed, so will that be, and that will be pushed forward. One more 5-day task. Sometimes there are occasions when you want to split a task. Sometimes a computer does that, depending on what you're asking it to do, but I'm going to go back onto the task tab, and then this little tool here is split task. Click on split task. This is just a guide. When I put my mouse onto the task, that becomes active, and you can see the date as I move forward. So if I want to split from Wednesday the 15th, if I click and hold and move forward, now I've got 2 sets of dates, and I'm going to Wednesday the 22nd, and I'm going to let go there. That's me creating that split. At any time I can bring that back. If I didn't like that split, I can just pull that back together and do it again, or I can split it multiple times if it's a long task. That's how you split a task. Now I'm just going to delete these tasks across the bottom. Now constraints. I want to put a constraint onto the project complete date, just to show you how that works. So I'm going to double click on project complete. I'm going to the advanced tab, which is where they are, and these are the constraints. So that is the default setting. I'm going to say this must finish on the 15th. See what happens here. 15th. Okay to that. That constraint's on. So basically this is all red, and now because I've put a constraint on there, there is no slack in this project. If I try to move that top task forward a day, it comes up, says this action will, not may or not could, will cause a scheduling conflict. Now I may want to continue, but if I do continue, I must remove the constraint and put another one on, or I cancel, which I'm going to do, and get somebody else maybe to do that task. Now you have to be careful with constraints, because if you put constraints on maybe all your milestones, for example, people tend to think like that. You're basically tying yourself up and allowing very little slack in a project plan. There's another feature you could use that's more visual than just putting a constraint on, and we'll give you a visual indicator if you're going past the constraint or you've hit that constraint, and that is a deadline marker. So I'm just going to double click on that. This is deadline marker. We're still on the advanced tab, so I'll put this into the future. So I'll put this onto the 22nd first off. So this is 22nd, and you get, for this task, you get a green arrow appearing on the screen. Now if I put that into the past, if I just double click onto that and put that into the past, if you go past that deadline marker, so if I go back to the 7th, click OK, if you've gone past that, you get a warning in the information column which tells you you've gone past your deadline marker. So that's more of a visual indicator for a project manager to, if you get close to this deadline marker and you haven't done certain tasks, you need to flag that up maybe. Now to remove both of these, it's the reverse process. Double clicking on that task and just clearing that data out of that box will remove the deadline marker, and then double clicking on this task, changing this back to the default setting, which is as soon as possible for this project, which is going from forward from a start date, and then again deleting the date out of that box. That will remove both of those constraints and deadline marker. So that is the end of this phase.
In this module, I want to talk about lead and lag time. So first of all, let's create a couple of tasks, task A and task B, both one-day tasks. Now normally, when you link a task, you just put the predecessor number in there. So if I want this to link to task 1, I'll just put a 1 in there, and there it links. Now lead time and lag time, if you're using the default task type, which is follow on, one task finishes and the next task starts, you have to qualify it with the FS prefix. Now, how do I know it's FS? If I double click onto task B and go to the predecessors tab, you have the types in this list here, and you've got the abbreviations at the end. So FS for the default, which you do not need to do if you're just having a straightforward link. But if you're going to put a lag on or a lead on, so a lag is a positive number, which is basically a delay, and a lead is a negative number, you do have to qualify it with these: FS, SS, FF, SF, whichever one you're using. So if I click OK to that one, what I would have to do to put a one-day lag on here, I would have to go 1 FS plus 1. One FS plus 1, and then you get the extra day lag. Now if I change that to a minus, 1 FS minus 1, you get the lead. So I'll do that as -2. Now I've got my entry bar up here, so I'll do -3 actually. It'll go forward back into the history, so it's asking me that. So there is lead time on that. Now if I just do a couple more tasks, task C, task D, if I do a finish to finish link on this one, so that is going to be for FF. You can see it does the link. So if I want to add a delay, a lag, I'm going to put a plus number on that, plus 2 days. If I want a lead, it's a minus number, minus 2 days. Now nothing seems to have happened because that's the start of the project and it didn't go back, even though this one did. What you have to do in this one, if I just push this one forward into next week, you can see it does the lead in time. So if I click on that again and do the minus 4 days, it comes back to the start date of the project. And if I go 4FF, 4FF plus 4, it goes the other way. So if I do on this one 2SS, that's the start. Cancel that, not 2SS, 7SS. That's a start to start link, so this task dictates when that one can start. So if I do a 7SS plus 1, that gives you the lead. If I go up there and put minus 1, it's doing that. Now 2 more, task E and F, task G and H. And if I link these together with an SF, so it's going to be 10 SF plus 1. So start to finish. So this task, the start of this dictates when that finishes. So if I put plus 4, you can see that. So this one would more likely have a delay on it. So if I put a lead on it, should I say, if I put minus 4, it's going back in time, minus 4 days. So it's just basically a plus or minus on the link that gives you the lead or the lag. And the last one, if I just do one more, let's do a 5-day task. Now if I split this task, just grab the split tool and just push it into next week. And then link a task to that, leave it as question mark. So if I go, what was it, 13 FS back to the normal one plus 1, so it links to this part of the task, not this part of the task. Now if I wanted that task to be linked but to sit in there, I would have to put a lead on it, so of something, a minus, say 8 days. Now it's sitting in there, and that's not a great symbol, I don't like the look of that, but what you could probably do if you wanted something to sit there is change that link to be 13SS plus 2, so then it's sitting, or plus 1, so it's starting on Monday, and it's dictated by this. If I move this, this is pushing that one along. Now there's a useful feature you can use lead or lag with, is to show a critical path. So sometimes if I just go task 1, task 2, say you've got a 1-day task and then another 1-day task, they're just following on. So start off with 17, but what you need is a 5-day drying time. So say that is pour wet concrete, and this one is to establish a building frame on that concrete. What you can do is do a lag on this of 5 days, and then it will show a critical path. So what I need to do first off is get rid of all of this. Just delete these 2 off at the top with space. And if I put the critical path indicator on, critical tasks. At the moment they're both red. But if I move this 5 days, so it's to Friday, only this one has gone red. This one is now not showing a critical path because there's slack there. You can't have a critical path if there's more than 1 day slack. If you want to change that, you can change that in options. At the moment it's on the default setting. However, if I just undo that, if I want to put a lag on that, so if I'll go 1 fs plus 5, this should have been plus 4, but never mind. It gives you the indicator that that is a critical path. So this is just drying time. So you could show a critical path by using the lag feature. So that's just a quick look at lead and lag. If I just double click into task 2, this is where it is, and as you can manually change that if you don't want to type or you can't remember what to type. That's how you'd have to do it. Double click in, use these arrows up and down to increase or decrease lead or lag. But that's the end of this session, so hopefully you enjoyed that, and I'll see you in the next one. This next section is all about adding resources to the resource sheet and then allocating resources to tasks. We'll also have a quick look at task types.
First of all, I'm going to create a resource list. So I'm going down onto these 4 buttons in the right hand corner. I'm going to click on the resource sheet option and start adding my resources. Now I'm typing the first name. You can type the first and second name of a resource if you wish. You can also use appointments like administrator, trainer, etc, etc, although that does negate some of the features of Microsoft Project. I'm going to have Microsoft Office as a resource, have computers as a resource, and paper, hotel, and contractors. Same rules apply when you're doing resources as with tasks. Depending on what detail you want to go down to, depends how many and how much resource you list. There are 3 main types of resource: work, material, and cost. So I'm going to just select material for Microsoft Office. I'm going to pull that down for computers and paper. Hotel I'm going to set to cost and show you how that works later on. Contractors I'm going to leave as work. Now in the material column, if I type an abbreviation for Microsoft Office, MSO, PCs for computers, and PAC for paper, those are the labels that will appear on the Gantt chart when you add that resource to a task. Now, because I'm using names there, I'm going to put the appointments in this group column. So I'm going to say that these guys at the top, these first 2 are trainers. So trainer, and then Bill can be an admin person, and then Ben can be the manager. Now, this allows you to filter when you create reports. So I could do a filter on trainers, or admin, manager, etc. If they're set to 100%, they're available all the time, 50%, 50% of the time, and so on and so on. You don't get that option when you've set a resource to material. I'm going to give each of these 4 people the same rate of pay and overtime rate, £10 an hour and £15, highlighting that, bringing those down. And I'm also going to say every time I allocate Microsoft Office to a task, it's going to cost me £100. PCs though, I'm going to put that as a fixed cost of £500. That was always going to be £500 no matter how many times or how many PCs I add. Paper, £1 an hour. Now the cost resource type doesn't give you the option to put a figure in this box. When you add the cost field to a task, that's where you add the amount. So you wouldn't necessarily know what hotel cost was until you actually booked the hotel cost in. Contractors, I'm going to put at £10 an hour. They are contractors, so they don't get overtime. So next column across after cost per use is accrue. So this can be prorated or at the start or at the end of a project. It's default at prorated. I'm going to leave it as that. Then you've got your calendars. You've got your 3 basic calendars, and obviously you can create your own calendar if you need to. And a column for cost codes if you use cost codes, and options there to add additional information or additional columns. And once you've got your task list typed out, you can then go to your Gantt chart and start allocating resources to tasks. So I've clicked on the resource tab, assign resources, and there's my resources. It's not the only way to do it, but I like this box because this box floats on the screen. I can click down these tasks, the task name appears at the top, and then I can allocate resources. So on this first task, install software room 1, I want to assign Anne and Ben, 2 people, and 2 computers, assign. Now that should stay at 500 because I said that is a fixed cost, so yes it does. 2 licenses, assign Microsoft Office. This will change. 2 licenses should go to £200, and paper, assign, and I want that to be, let's say they use 2 packs of paper per hour, so that's how you factor that in, 2 per hour. That goes up to 16, so that's okay for that. Now all the costs, as you can see, are listed in this box, but what I can't see is a sort of overarching cost, so I'm going to change this table view to the cost table, and then that will give me the overarching cost. So 876 is what this is costing me so far. Test software room 1, I'm going to allocate Bill. He gets 1 computer, gets 1 license, and he uses a pack of paper per hour, so 1 per hour on there, and that's cost me 688. Next one down, training, I'm going to give that to the contractors, assign, and they don't need Microsoft Office, but they do need a hotel, so this is where you put the cost of that hotel in there. So let's say that was £250 for that hotel, and that's the contractors. And that's the process you go through to assign your resources. If you find that you've got something listed that you don't assign, you probably didn't need to have it listed in the first place, and you can just go back to your resource sheet and delete it. So far this project, I'll just close that, is costing $18.94. Now if I go back to the resource sheet and double click on Anne, for example, and I will look at the resource in more detail. So when the resource information box comes up, when you double click, this is about Anne. You've got her availability at the bottom there. If I change that and say, for example, she's not available until the 27th, but thereafter she's available, if I click away from that and click OK, because I've got Anne allocated already, she's flagging red, which is not good, so I'll just go back in there, take that off, put it back to NA, which means she's available from then on. But that's what that's for. Now on the right side you've got her calendar, so this works in the same way as a project calendar, so exceptions would be listed here, work weeks. If this changed, so if, for example, if I go into this and say on Fridays, she only works till 8 o'clock, she starts at 8 till 12, starts at 8, finishes at 12. If I click OK to that, click on any Friday, that will say there what the hours are. There's the normal hours. I'll go, she's actually gone red there, so I'm just going to go back and take that off. So click on Friday, use the default settings, click OK, back to default, and then OK. Next, across the top you've got costs, so this is used for where you've got increments depending on where or when you're working. So for example, there is the default, £10 an hour and £15. Let's say that Anne goes to a foreign country, and while she's in that foreign country she gets £12 an hour and £17 an hour overtime. When she comes back, a week after maybe, she goes back down to a basic of 10 and 15. And this can also be used for bulk buys. You may buy a pack of paper at £1 per pack, but if you buy 100 packs it's only a penny a pack and things like that. You can use these cost code tables for that. You've got quite a few there. The default one is A, and in each of these tables you've got quite a few rows. Next at the top you've got a notes tab, similar to tasks. You add a notes option there. I'm just going to give it a title, job spec, and then as we did before, you click on the little insert object and you can insert a document. I'm just going to insert a new blank Excel worksheet just for demonstration purposes. Click on the display's icon so it will look like that. Click OK. Because I've created a new one, this will actually sit in Microsoft Project. There it is. It actually says there worksheet in software implementation. I don't even need to save that really, it'll stay there. I could save it if I wanted to, but I don't need to because it will be saved within project. Next tab across you've got custom fields, so if we add any fields or create any custom fields, they would be listed in this box. We haven't done that, so there aren't any. Just click OK to that, and then that information is displayed there. The reason I did a title job spec is so you can see there's something there and what it is, because otherwise you just see the apostrophe that's at the bottom there, which doesn't really tell you anything, and you'd have to double click into it to find out what was there. Now, next little bit, I want to come back onto the Gantt chart and talk quickly about task types. So I'm just going to create 4 tasks: task A, task B, task C, and task D. And I'm going to put this table back to the entry tables. Don't need to look at the costs anymore. So we've got the information column. Now each of these tasks are going to be 1 day in duration. Now the default task type is fixed unit, but there are 2 other types which I want to show you now. If I just double click into task A, you can see that. So there you've got fixed units, fixed duration, fixed work, fixed units. Now next to fixed units you have this effort driven tick box, which is not ticked by default in this version of project, but in some older versions that is ticked, and you can also change that in options as well. And I just want to show you what happens when this box is ticked. So first off, I'll leave it unticked, so this is the default option. So I'm going to add an, assign in an, nothing happens. That was my first allocation. Don't worry about it going red, that's just because she's on these tasks further above. I assign Ben, nothing happens to that duration, so it stays the same. They're both doing 8 hours and both getting paid £80 each. Now if I remove both of those, so I remove those, double click back onto the task, go into the advanced tab and tick effort driven, so it's still fixed unit, but I'm going to tick effort driven, clicking OK to that. Now watch what happens. So I'll assign Anne. Nothing happens on the first one because that's my initial assignment, but when I assign Ben or anybody else, what happens, it will start driving the duration down. So there you go, assigned Ben, it started driving the duration down. So they're now just doing 4 hours each on this task, and that's what that effort driven tick will do. Now sometimes you don't want the duration to change no matter how many people you put on the task. So if I do task B and change it to the next one, which is fixed duration, again you've got the tick on or off. I'll leave the tick off to start with and click OK, and I will assign Anne. Nothing happens, the duration is fixed at 1 day. Ben, nothing happens, they both get full pay, they're both doing 8 hours work. Now if I do something similar in task C, but this time fixed duration, put the tick on, tick is on, the duration can't change, so what does change? If I click OK to that, and then I do the same thing again, assign Anne, nothing happens, but now the tick is going to do something. So if I assign Ben, what it does is doesn't touch the duration, it's still 1 day, it drives down the hours, so in this case they're both doing 4 hours each. So that tick on a fixed duration task, the effort driven tick, will drive down the hours. Now the last one, task D, is what's called a fixed work task. Before I do that one, I just need to insert the work column. So insert column, type W to get to the W's at work. And then I want an example here of 10 hours work that I'm paying for over a 10-day period. So first off, into task D, I changed it to fixed work. Now when I do that, notice that you do not have the option of taking the tick on or off, or put it on or off, but it is on. So in terms of project, it will try and drive the duration down. when you add extra resources. Let's see what happens. So if I add, let's do the criteria first. So 10 hours over a 10-day period. So if I add Anne, nothing will happen. So if I added Anne, Bill and Ben, nothing would happen either. If I added them all together. It's only when you add them individually that things start changing. But if I add another resource, it will start driving the duration down. The hours stays the same, but now the duration's changed. If I wanted that back at 10 days, I put it back at 10 days. But if I was going to do that initially, what I perhaps should have done is just highlighted 2 people or 3 people and assigned them as my initial allocation. It's something that takes a little bit of time to get used to, and creating these tasks like I've done there, A, B, C, D, and doing what we've just done in this example is a very good way of getting your head around how it all should work. And now that is the end of this module. I hope you've enjoyed it, and thank you for your time.
Right guys, now you've finished that second section. This is the exercise for part 2. What you need to do is open up this file new location, which you did in the first part. Remove all the tasks except the ones shown, so you're getting rid of those repeating tasks, and then you creating this layout. So it's the links you're looking at doing. They're all follow-on links. There's nothing special on these links, so you just create that. And then if you come down and set up the format, so you've got the labels on the right there, and then it's asking you to create a new task. It's going to be buy pictures, 3 days duration, and link the task to the fit furniture task and add a 4-hour lead. That's just to practice that. Don't worry too much about what happens to the rest of it. It's just, can you remember how to do a 4-hour lead? Coming down from that, that's what it should look like, similar to that. You are changing the, I just jumped down a page there, you're changing the duration of the fit furniture task to 3 days, split the buy pictures task to 1 day and 2 days, and change the non-working time indicator bar, which is this grey coloured bar, to display in front of the tasks. So anything going across the weekend doesn't, so it looks like this, so it doesn't look like it's working on the weekend. If I come down again onto the next page, that's the end of that one, so you can save and close that. This is a completely new project called Building a House, and these are the tasks and the durations. You have to create these links, and again, don't read too much in the actual project plan, but it's whether you can do these links, and it tells you in this list which link follows which task. So your site survey, dig foundation follows site survey, for example. You've got start to finish tasks there. On the deliver concrete, deliver timber, deliver windows lower, deliver windows upper. Those are the ones that are just hanging off. And once you've completed that one, you're putting a constraint on the customer sign-off task. And then you're going on to the next sheet, where again you're back into new location and you're creating this resource sheet, and you're allocating these resources to those tasks. Then you're going to create a fixed duration task for a 2-day seminar and assign John Black to it. You're looking at the cost view to see if there's any cost. Notice the cost of your project. And then you're doing this final, you can save and close that one. You're doing this final project where you're creating a new project called task types. This one. And then you set it up so you can see the labels, and you're doing these links. These links are already there for you. You're adding this resource sheet, and then you are assigning the resources as it says below. Make sure you do the right type of task, fixed duration, fixed unit, and it's telling you whether the effort driven tick is on or not. And then fixed work for that one. Assign everybody to the general assembly task, and then you basically follow it down, telling you what to do. Assign the people to the training task. Use the resource information to double click on the resource. So this is adding different rates of pay on the resource sheet. So you need to get into the resource sheet and then double click on it on a person. So Steve first, change his rate of pay to 40 from the start of next month. Wednesday's a non-working time for Dave, and the start time for Carol is 6 o'clock on Thursday. So that's changing the calendars. You then add in the following cost resource and assigning it to general assembly. Once you've done that, that is the end of this section. You can move on to the next section. At any point that you're not quite sure how to do any of this, just go back into the video and have a quick look at the relevant bits, and then come back and have a go at doing the exercise. But other than that, move on to the next section.